Hey, it's Courtney, your host of Environmental Style Now, the A to Z podcast on all that is sustainable fashion. This episode of ES Now is part one of two incredible episodes with DeAnna Batdorff, 30-year practitioner of Ayurveda who has served over 300,000 patients. And she's going to walk us through a fast fashion detox protocol for the body. Hey, it's Courtney Barriger, and on this episode of ES Now, we are with DeAnna Batdorff of the DeAnna Center in Sebastopol, California. After going deep into the toxins present in apparel last month, DeAnna is doing us the kindness to go through a list of protocols that will help us eliminate those accumulations of forever chemicals and microplastics in the body. So, there's a lot here, and we broke down this episode into two parts that you will want to have a notebook handy for. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, I'm so happy to have you back on my podcast. And today,
very happy to be here.
And today we're going to be talking about forever chemicals and where they come from, how they accumulate in your body, and microplastics. So I want to start off from an Ayurvedic perspective. How do these chemicals and plastics disrupt the body?
Okay. Well, there's something in Ayurveda, and it's in multiple cultures and traditions of medicine around the world. And that is really looking at these three fundamental things in our body that become imbalanced from, say, a foreign invader. It can be triggered more emotional, but that becomes eating, and that can become other issues too. But in this case, we're looking at these foreign invaders, something that doesn't live in our body or isn't produced by our body, that is going to be seen in that way by our immune system, which is our lymphatic system and the flow of our immunity. And so as soon as we have all these chemicals that don't belong there, we're going to start registering a response in that immune system to get our defense and our warriors together, our B and our T cells, our lymphocytes. And they start letting you know, kind of like a siren, like a fire engine going down the road. They're going to give us these inflammatory signals that start saying, whoa, I don't know what to do with this. And if it's just the new, if it's like newly entering your body, we're designed to filter. So I just want to make sure we're establishing that our bodies are actually designed to filter. We have an appendix that is the filter of our intestines. We have 7 pathways of the liver, which is a very important topic here as we get further in. And we have our spleen. Our liver's over here on the right side. Our spleen is over here on the left. Liver's anger. Spleen is resentment. And it's interesting because resentment is from old anger or anger unresolved. And our spleen is dependent on the liver. So interesting, it's resentment, the harboring of anger. And that's our immune system. It's our immune organ. So we have a filtering organ and we have an immune organ as these fundamental places where we just have 7 pathways in our liver to open up and cleanse through. And our minerals are most important in remedies in this conversation today. The minerals are going to be where I go. Sometimes I sound like an enzyme freak. Other times I sound like a mineral freak. It really depends on the situation that I'm talking about as a health issue in someone's body, right? So this is going to be where I'm all about the minerals, because that's how we open up cleansing pathways in the most primary fundamental ways in our body. And those minerals are things that chemicals can bind to and make them very weak. And then they don't even get where they need to go. And then we see some really early stages of this idea would be, joint pain and joint conditions. And the truth is, we have a lot of those now. A lot of those now. excuse me so much, like Ehlers-Danlos, for instance, or the rise of lupus.
Wow.
And these are things where those, small particles, I'm so sorry. I have a little tea.
There we go.
Yeah, that's where those small particles kind of bind to the minerals and use up all of their energy. And then we're left with the byproduct and the takeover of those, say, microplastics or smaller particulate chemicals. So it's really about saturation and overuse of the minerals. And then our immune system and our pathways can't just keep working and working and working. As we know, eventually we get exhausted. And that's why exhaustion is a
Mm.
whole nother picture of symptoms that are huge in this topic today. Joints and and like brain fogs or like nervous system relations. These are going to be some of the really most important things to learn how to track. And also, what can we do daily to remedy that? So we're not just living in fear and we're keeping our pathways we're helping our body shine, right? Like I want to make sure my body is shining and not just getting taken over by these things that are kind of surrounding us, and we can't just stop them right now. Let's hope we stop them and change and reverse and shift this, but they're now present. And so I really think this is going to be a fun topic today of just looking at like what gets under our skin,
Hmm.
right? From the clothing we wear and what's in the air also, because those are connected. And just what do we do with making sure that doesn't hit a saturation point and that we keep our energies level enough to really keep things flushing out of the body, So Ayurvedically, we'd be looking at how much is already hardened and tightened and become inert in your system. We're going to have to liquefy it to get it to shift. And that's called deficiency, vata, hardened, tight, cold, stiff. Or has it more provoked you, or are you more of a pitta person even? And so when those microtoxins get in there, then basically, the pitta inflammation, the flare occurs, and then there's all these inflammatory responses. And that's often when there's other things involved, like heavy metals. We can't really talk about forever toxins without talking about the heavy metals that are kind of surrounding even the dye industry, like alum, from aluminum, the mordants. Those are all very heavy metal related, and they kind of bring in a whole nother factor, for us to consider in like what's getting under our skin and how do we make sure we get it out of there, you
Yeah. So
know?
how much how much does your skin take in from what you wear, and where does it go? And um, I mean, you mentioned it going into the joints, and
Mhm.
what they're even saying that there are microplastics in the brain now. Like,
Oh yeah. Okay, well, as you know, because, Courtney, we're having this lovely conversation, but we have quite a beautiful history. And one of those is working together in the world in business. And the other one is you've also, chosen to be a student of mine. So you hold some amazing good remedies and pieces, to continue this conversation with your viewers. I mean, I just think it's important to kind of place that you know and as you know, which is what I'm gearing up to say, I'm lymphatically obsessed. I've been telling people recently, like it's the best addiction I've ever had. This is the healthiest addiction I have ever, and I'm so glad it's lasted so many years. And there's so much to be said about the lymphatic system, which is also the immune system. So your question really comes to like how much gets in our skin. Well, skin is one of 7 tissues in the body. So we have lymph river. The lymph river meets the bloodstream. Then you have your muscles, one of the largest plasters and kind of protectors of your body. Then you have the skin layers, which is a special tissue because it lets out toxins, which is the answer of how we're going to survive, sweating. And then we have the pores and the porosity and the transdermal effect that happens with the layer of the skin. So it's an inner and outer relation. Then all of those 4 tissues, lymph, blood, muscle, skin, feed the bones and protect the bones and the nerves and the reproductive. Our glandular self. We don't want things to get so dry or so hot or so stuck in our bodies that we end up with our glandular system, which is where hormones come in. That's where the estrogen's like, I'm at a tipping point, or, adrenaline causing inflammatory from a foreign invader. And it's like an overreaction, like crying wolf, but it's definitely, your body starts like freaking out. And that's really the 7 tissues: lymph, blood, muscle, skin, bones, nerves, reproductive. And we want that lymph to be doing its flushing job and its immunity job, being like, wait a minute, I know you, and I already figured out how to liquefy you through sour enzymes and high amounts of minerals, and I can digest you on contact because I know you don't belong here. And that's what our immune system does. And as long as it's not too much, what goes in, you could keep sweating out. And that is one of the biggest values of Ayurveda is their body work, their swedana. So swedana is basically this idea that if you sweat 20 minutes a day, anything that's permeable getting in your tissues, you are pushing back out of your tissues.
Wow. So
So
simple,
we have
but
built-in mechanisms to make sure that our skin is breathable. And you don't want, the other part of your question, you don't want it to get so beyond the skin layer that it's embedded in the striations, the little stripes that make our muscles bend. You don't want it to start infiltrating and hardening or turning into lactic acid. For some different chemicals are going to turn lactic acid and get trapped in the muscle. Others stop you from being able to digest calcium, and you end up getting all these little calcium bits like stuck in the muscle. So, like when we're in gua sha class and somebody's all, it sounds like there's like pebbles or sand. That's all somebody who's definitely doesn't have a good breakdown of calcium. It usually means they're low blood pressure, they run cold. People who run cold, they get more problems with calcium. People who run cold get more bone issues as they're older. So we got to make sure that those chemicals don't get embedded into their bone, which means you got to keep your blood pressure regulated, stable, cardio happening, and sweating all the way out from lymph to blood to muscle to skin. So the person who's like, oh, I don't really sweat, it's kind of nice. I'm like, that's actually not great. That means you don't have water to sweat, which is called dehydration. A bigger issue than we talk about. Or they're so cold and there's kind of things have calcified or gotten trapped, and that's where those joints come in, that, it means that all those chemicals have places to just bind to, So like think about rocks in the ocean and that things are made of calcium, like all the beautiful sea creatures. Oh, and the shells that they live in. And like they're all hard and inert and they bind, right? So I always look, everything I do is nature bound. It's the elements. No one's denying them. I can talk to anybody about them. Doctors I work with, chemists, anybody. Nobody's denying that. And so we really do have to be like, am I cold and stuff is binding to me? Boy, man, you better keep that sweat going. And the moment I tell people, if you start sweating regularly, you're going to know your blood is flowing better because you're just sweating on demand. That's actually how we let out what gets in.
incredible.
So we have to be responsible to keep these flowing through us. And this conversation, because we're talking about topical, is really about the lymph, blood, muscle, skin for sure, you know. And then it's going to go from skin into muscle, and then it kind of starts affecting blood vessels, and then it kind of gets in, and the immune system's like, oh my gosh, we're in saturation mode. I gotta help. But it knows to throw out a siren. And then we have the secondary inflammation, that starts happening. And so then the person is, and so sweating is a big part of this, and making sure there's enough water in your river and bloodstream, you know, to really have water to let out is a very big part of this.
And so there's also a huge conversation going on about how there are BPAs in polyester. And apparently they mimic estrogen. A part of the conversation is, okay, there's low fertility happening all over the world. Where is it coming from? A big part of microplastics in the water, in the air, come from our clothes. So how does that look? What does that look like in our bodies if it's gone through the bloodstream and now it's pretending to be a hormone? Like, what do you
Yeah.
do? What do you do now?
Yeah. Well, I have really good news, which is great. But then we'll go back and talk about that. The good news is our hormones move from one gland to another. They have a highway. I call it the hormonal highway. It's called your lymphatic system. So here we are, right back to lymph. And why do I talk about it so much? Our hormones literally use it as the thoroughway to release into the bloodstream, and then it goes to the liver, and our liver recycles or uses whatever it can to remanufacture, like manufacture new, or recycle, or to the dump. Or to the dump you go. And then it's going to be liquid dump, urinary, and solid dump, intestines. And then anything that's already stuck in the tissues has to be sweat out. So urine, feces, and sweat are our excretory. And sweating, that's why when you're hormonal and you're all like, oh my God, look at that person over there. Oh my God, look at that person over there. Right? When you start, pheromonious, we smell. People often smell their people, and it makes them turn their head. They're like, he was behind me. She was right behind me. And like, I didn't know she was there. And it's like, well, yeah, but why'd you turn your head? It's like you smelled that person. So our hormones let out through sweat and through liquid exchange, which, we know that is true because we smell more even during menses, and men have cycles too, all bodies, all levels of bodies, and they all show up through odors and those sweat glands. And that is through the lymph channels. Look at this is the largest lymph channel we have, right through our primary places. Where's our other large? Yeah, put your hands down on your root chakra right now. Touch yourself. That is your lymph. And those are those areas too that we sit on the fabric, and it snuggles up sometimes under our armpits. And then it's a gateway to the lymph. This is the problem, right?
Especially
This is
with
the
like,
problem. We have tons of lymph in our abdomen, and then we have all this like extra elastic there. And it's like, oh, it's like right over, or the elastic of bra, goes right over, for female bodies, it goes just like boom, and it's right in that lymph channel, which is why we have so much more cancer in the upper channels, and the lower channels, because the amount of lymph immunity that's in there. So it is getting in there. And I have to say, I used to be a little bit more of a, recycle, and I'm super thrifter. I don't like to buy anything new. And this is where we had that match. I'm like, I don't really want to, I maybe my linen from Turkey, I got this beautiful linen, but, I try to watch what I'm doing, just like anyone else. But the polyester is getting so old, and it's such an old form of plastic. It is truly breaking down to a level where I can tell you my innate instinct is like, I just can't anymore.
Yeah.
And I never felt that way. I mean, you can find all kinds of pictures of me with my poly on and then I got thrifting out. But it's really getting the vintage, I think, and I love vintage clothes, so it's really hard to say. I even bought some vintage poly while we were in Portugal together. And
Oh,
and I'm like, oh, I just sport it, but I wear it and I'm like, yeah, it's not breathable and I can feel it's like, oh my gosh, this is breaking down. It's probably getting in my skin more. And so I do think that consciousness that you speak of in your book of just where you buying your clothes and what's really up against your tissues is huge. But I do want to, talk about like enemas and colonics, or even thinking about magnesium, which is one of the major, really important things for the pathways of the liver. So, and easy to find in your store, would be calm magnesium, but it's really calm citrate. And it more clears the intestines so that you can uptake it and do better cleansing processes and stay calmer. And I do think anything you can do to not over purge your intestines, but keep them clean, keep your urinary flushed, which means drink enough water to make sure you're really kind of moving energy through and cycling your waters, keeping your ocean waves at a really good, this is good blood pressure. I surely should be doing this. This is good blood pressure. You don't want too high a tides, too much pressure. You don't want too low of a tide, low pressure. And it's also too hot and too cold. We went right down the middle and we need electromagnetic energy. One of them's magnesium, but it's in a group of 4 called electrolytes. And they keep that water just innately cycling, so our tides are stable, our blood pressure stable. We can cardio release and sweat on demand. And so I do think I'm I'm in a place in my life after being, pretty able to do a lot of polyester or kind of connect to recycle really easily. Um, I do think it's too old in it, and it means that it's permeating the tissue
mm.
faster and easier because it's already breaking down. It's the same thing I say for somebody if you have a filling in your mouth that's mercury, you know, and it's literally starting to break down and it's starting to get pitted, or you could feel the edges, like that is disintegrating, and you are swallowing that. And you are going to get mercury in your stomach. Like you are letting that, you got to get those, because people are like, well, there's no hot cold, it doesn't hurt. I'm like, no, that's mercury breaking down in your mouth. That's why we don't use it anymore. And then people are like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. And then somebody's like, I'm going to the dentist immediately. I'm like, nobody likes going to the dentist, but you got to get the mercury out because it is slowly disintegrating, because everyone who has it is at an age now where it is disintegrating. So nobody can convince me at this point that any mercury in anybody's age group that had it, it's just, you got to get that out of there and get some proper fillings, and it's a whole nother ball game. So I think there's a lot more to those plastics in the polyester, and they're just so old. They didn't know how to, you know, think about
And,
um,
and they're actually, because
inertia.
they're such a new fabric that we're not even used to seeing how they break down. We're just beginning to understand it and study it. So it's like you can pull out wool, like a wool. I mean, you can literally find intact wool on a mountaintop from 2000 years ago. So we know that the
Yes.
natural fibers hold up.
Yep.
It's
That's right.
such an interesting time. So
Yeah.
for
And the fact that we're still making it, and
yeah,
obviously, that's it, is really a tricky one. But the old stuff, I'm like, oh, you're just going to be absorbing toxins. And it just seems like, no, we kind of have to see what we can do to, you know,
Have you
And
seen?
then there's the other question, what do we do with all that fabric,
Well,
So, yep,
there are some answers there. There's definitely
yep.
some discovery going on with like different mushrooms that can eat it and break it down.
That's right. Proper composting. And
Yeah.
again, if the immune system can figure out how to break things down that are foreign invaders, our environment is the most amazing immune system we have. I mean, we are such a brilliant mimic of that immunity outside, and the flora. Why do we call our internal probiotic base flora? It's flora, you know. And fauna comes from flora, which is moisture and hydration and ability to break things down. So it's kind of like, how little can I buy it? How little can I wear it? Sometimes, I'm a sucker for beauty and fashion. So,
That's how I ended up here. It's
you
exactly
know
how
what
I
I
ended up
mean?
here.
So, I did start in the beauty industry, even though You know, I went into holistic health pretty early on from that timeline, but that is where I started, going to cosmetology school during high school in a vocational program. And yeah, and I remember the amount of chemicals in the salon I worked in, and
Oof, 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 oof,
you
oof.
know what I mean? And just that part of everything too. And,
What we do for beauty, it's absolutely
yeah,
insane.
yeah. Yeah, but what we also have at our disposal as beauty and for beauty is pretty cool. It's just, how do we make that conscious decision? One of the things I talk about back into the like, what do we do for this? One of the things I like to talk about is like, if you're saturated on a chemical level, and we can even talk about some symptoms or wherever you want to go with that. But if we're saturated or it's really gotten to us, or maybe there's enough heavy metals that are just really added up, well, we don't necessarily feel health or the concepts of like what's balanced or not balanced because our symptoms become us. We become them. They added up slowly and then it becomes us slowly. So one of the things I notice for people is I'm like, yeah, just try the remedies. Let's see how this goes. But really, the proof should be in, do you have less symptoms? Do you have more energy? Like, are your joints changing if that was the issue? Do you have less ringing in your ear if that was the issue? What has changed? And usually when people start feeling healthy, kind of reminds me of like anytime someone's done like a diet, not that I'm condoning dieting, but just like, come on, most everyone has done a cleanse or a diet or something. And you're kind of like, oh my gosh, can I even do this? And then you get a couple weeks in, you're like, I will never eat sugar again. And the clients will come in and say that, and everyone knows I humor my work. And they'll be like, I don't ever want sugar again. That's gone. No more. And I'm always like, that's lovely. And just so you know, the sugar will sneak back in. But you have these feelings of like, whoa, I feel better. I could stay with this. So we do have to elevate our health, to even have the energy to face the world, the
Mhm.
environment, or having the bandwidth to not just go shopping for some clothes, but where are you shopping? Or like, are you making sure you're putting your worth as part of your health? So paying a little bit more for clothes, for them to be the right clothes that will last too, is so much more important than sort of the quick, oh, I don't have very much money, I can afford that. And then we kind of drop the plastic equation, but then we're wearing it. And then we
Mhm.
don't have any energy. And then that doesn't allow us to execute our dreams and our visions, our dharma. So, I always try to talk about that. I'm like, I'm going to spend enough time on my health. And I'm still a minimalist on that. I'm not the most disciplined person in the world. I like my AM, PM. Let's make this easy. I'm more about 3 hours a week, you know, um, and just like really rocking out some me time and then just doing the best I can daily. But I do think we have to have enough time and investment in our health to even make healthy decisions when we're out in the world. And part of out in the world is shopping. That's one of the best parts of out in the world.
I know. I've been shopping with you before. It was so much fun. I love it too.
And I
Turkey.
also have a partner who likes to shop, as you know, because you have traveled with him too. So, yeah. And you just got to really kind of, okay, is this the right store, the right fabrics? But anyway, I'll just say so much of that is right here in this amazing book. Wow, I really, really, and I know you're on tour right now, but the Planet Healing Mindset. I mean, that's the whole point of you being the author of this beautiful book. And if you don't mind, and then feel free to ask me more questions, but I'd like to just say I've been spending time with this book out on my back porch. But I did a random this morning and was like, I'm just going to open up to any page and see what presents and see how it, works for today. Well, it's kind of exactly where we are. I opened up to page 161, recycle. And even that, I saw the word and I was like, oh, I feel different about recycle than I used to. That was my first thought. And that's what we just discussed. But the best part of the opening of this chapter is you're talking about your birthday in northern Portugal. And I love that the add-on was my room was chilly, damp, and smelled faintly of mold. You were on a tour in Portugal with me, and I found the most fabulous, beautiful place to rent. It was just like such a magical land, and it had mold, and it was such a problem. And I just read that and I was like, oh, I remember that. It was just, very, very sweet. And you were talking about that amazing castle in Transylvania that you went to on Halloween. And the whole time we were there in Portugal and you were in my clinical course that I taught there, um, you were you were sewing your dress.
It's so crazy that it all comes
And that's what
together
I
in
turned to
this
this
way.
morning.
That's crazy. That I was over the moon on that trip because I got the book deal. First
You
of
had just
all,
got your
I had
book
just gotten the
deal.
book deal, so I was like, "Oh my
And
God."
everyone was like, you go, you go.
Yes,
It was so
yes.
cool. Yeah. And then, yeah, you left. You're like, oh, now I'm leaving to Transylvania. See y'all.
Bye.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And then everybody went to the hotel to see your picture, the Vogue magazine cover on the wall. And you were just in this really powerful place in your life of becoming an author, and holding court was just like really finding its way. And then you were studying health with me and Ayurveda, and just like, how do you do this nourishing and cleansing relation to the body? Because really we have to know when to cleanse and when to nourish. They're both very important in this topic, and yeah, and then off you went to Transylvania in this fabulous, oh my gosh, it was just the most fabulous. I hope people get to see a picture of you in that dress
I have to
because it
put
was
out,
really,
I have to
really good.
share those
You sent
pictures
us
with you.
pictures, so I know you have some.
Yeah, yeah, I
I think you
definitely
should
do.
post those. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I sewed it, I hand sewed it.
I know.
It was the
It was
craziest
beautiful.
thing.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to give a little how far you've come, and I just want to remind you, you followed through. And it takes time, just like cleansing the body or nourishing the body. Like that was 2.5, almost 3, that was 3 years ago, because I've done Turkey and India since then
Yeah.
on tours. So like that was 3 years ago.
It
And
takes
you,
time to do it and to do it with integrity and
Yes.
um, with as much, honesty that I could put in there. I'm like, there's so many avenues of what is available in information that is not fully studied and uh, not backed in science. So I really did my best to make sure that I was giving at the
Yeah.
time the most accurate information that I could find and also be personable. And I have to say, like when I met you in Portugal, that was like a turning point in my life. It was crazy.
Oh,
And I'm so, so, so happy that I could be there with you and get to nurture in that time.
yeah. 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 Very special, And so, yeah, just wanted to give a reflection, of like things take time. We often do cleanses and we're like, go, 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 like, and then we go still to work, and the body shuts down, actually. It shuts down because it needs rest to replenish. Like we forget that replenish is of value. Like we can't keep going without it. Like we're dependent on rest and replenish. And that's also for waters, right? Our waterways have to be replenished. And we are just like the environment. We are no different. Just like the soil can absorb, our skin absorbs.
Mm.
The soil can be churned and mended. We can actually be churned and cleansed and mended. And then water is how we continue growing, and plants with water, just giving you a visual, plants with water, they come up out of the soil and reach to the sun, and that is our skin coming up to the surface and reaching the sun to sweat. Cardio. You can do it from the inside out, or you can do it with some sun and then, and sweat from there. That's why we do saunas or steam rooms or gardening, or any of those things. And you want to know how dry you are. If you can't sweat, you'll know you're kind of tapped out
Mm.
and you're not going to be able to cleanse. Like, we don't clean a pot when it's dry. We clean a pot when it's wet. We have to soak the pan, then clean the pan. So, maybe something, because I know you have access to it, or I can give you access, but like I'm pretty sure you have it, the spring cleanse, which can be fall too. That's a great starter point for everyone. I do have my two ebooks, hydration, there's a trine of hydration, and how do we assimilate, absorb water, and how do we have an epicenter, of water in our gut. And then also I have another ebook that's free on my website, which is the river of life, the lymphatic system, and like what do you do to keep this lymph and blood moving, whether that be salt scrub or gua sha or daily abhyanga. That's how we protect our skin from getting toxins. Like literally, if we want less to get in, we need to have a sealant. And I always say, think about beeswax, like it's water, it's waterproof. It repels water. And so I think thinking that's why I like more salves or
Mm.
sesame oil that has enough wax in it. Like I do the Mahanarayan or the ashwagandha bala oil with sesame. I sell both of those. They're Ayurvedic medicated oils. Or a salve that literally has some beeswax in it and it seals. It's a daily oleation called abhyanga. And when you make that sealant in there, it creates a protective layer. So those things just can't, the chemicals get trapped in the lipid. And then as long as you sweat, you just push it back out the pores.
So would you imagine putting that on first thing in the morning and then having a sweat by the end of the day?
Yes. And traditionally, but this is a hard convince for many of people because we are conditioned humans, right? No matter where we live, there's some conditioning that's going on. So our conditioning here is that we have to like soap up in water and then sort of use a light lotion. Otherwise, we're still dirty. Well, in Ayurveda, and throughout most of Asia, to be honest, There's a very different thing that happens, which is they put the oil on and they do this deep, like really pulling the muscle and pulling it out and like rotating all the joints. And they vigorously oil up and then they take a shower and the water goes in and pulls the toxins out of the lipid out and they take hot shower, or they'll go in a sauna first and then shower or a lot of bathing, you know? And then what it does is the toxins literally lift out of the oil and you sweat it out. And then you just rub the rest of the oil on as a protectant for the day. So they don't even really soap up per se. And it's been proven that lipids collect toxins, and it's one of the ways you could cleanse your pores out and cleanse your like sweat glands. But it is a hard sell in this culture. So usually I'm kind of like, okay, how about shower, soap, do your thing, but finish with an oil or finish with a salve. And just make sure you're like embodying, like really touch yourself. I'm a huge advocate for touching yourself. I'm like, we need to know, where is pain? Where am I too tight? Where is there soreness? Like we can rub that stuff out. Those are symptoms. We want to recognize them and be like, oh, maybe if I rub you every day, you won't hurt anymore. And if the pain goes away in the joint, guess what? You're better. We should be able to see difference when we do these things. We should feel better. And then they get to prove themselves. Talk about research and proof. Less symptoms in your body and more energy levels. There's the proof you're feeling better, and
I love your shower scrubs because it has the oil and the scrub in the shower.
and you feel clean because you use the salt, that gives you that scrub and that slough, and then you're left like a baby's butt. You're just like, whoa,
Oh, it's amazing. It's
sweetest
and
little soft skin ever. You're just like, oh, this is so luxurious. And yet I just cleansed my top layers and made sure none of those are kind of binding and moving in through our system. Yeah, so that's kind of an all-in-one kind of thing. And not very many scrubs are made with Sonoma salt or Atlantic gray salt, like true salts, that are being like sun harvested and monitored, and that's just a really big part of the salt I have, is making sure it's being monitored on the regular. We don't need to take in more microplastics than we're already wearing.
exactly. Let's just rub a little more microplastics. Remember when all of the like the apricot scrub from the 2000s was like a plastic base
Oh,
and
yes.
you're rubbing oh my gosh.
I know. I know. Or, well, that's still happening. The most common scrubby mitts, you
Yeah,
know,
they are plastic.
are made out of plastic. I mean, I can find hemp ones anywhere. And we saw those, remember those beautiful ones I got everybody in Turkey on the
Oh,
tour?
amazing.
Those are gorgeous. I use mine every day. So earthen hemp mitts, but like we got to think about how far this is going. But it does have a sense of cleanly, and you get to sweat, as you're scrubbing and moving your lymph and blood. And yeah, I think this is an important thing, just advocating for like, are you sweating 20 to 30 minutes a day? And do you have enough water volume to even make that happen?
And what about any herbs or a dietary thing that you could
Yeah.
like supposedly cleanse? I mean, there's the cleansing thing, which is a focused moment in your life when you're trying to get rid of a toxic
Yes.
load. And then there's also just the habits that you can bring in. So do you have any
Okay.
recommendations for that?
Yes. So I'll back up and say, the magnesium citrate was specific for cleansing intestines, which is the seat of health. So that's we don't want to get too far away from like, that's the epicenter. It's the most important place to stay, keep moving, and keep cleansing. But our liver needs something and has a built-in design in these 7 pathways called methylation. And methylation is mostly done through B complexes. And we know that magnesium and B, especially B12, it's most popular. We're dependent on them to cleanse our primary seat of the gut. So B12s are liver, magnesium is intestines. They become equally important, but once the liver is really held up, and it's saturated, it's got 600 jobs a day. That's the head honcho. Like that is the leader of the body, whether you want to think there's leadership or not. There is in our body, I can tell you that. And that leadership, for it to do its job efficiently, it needs those 7 pathways open, and each one of them are different B complexes. So I will plug a company I love because you're going to find all kinds of methylation pills and it gets a little overwhelming. There's a company called Thorne with an E, and they make a beautiful methylation plus with folate, which is of the word folic acid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more of a liver booster to kind of like really give your energy, the liver, the energy it needs to start uptaking B. So I would always choose the folate no matter what company you go to. And you start with 1 pill a day and you never go more than 4 a day, but you work your way up and you just watch your detox levels, and you can work, as long as you don't take too many or try to go too quick. And I don't like to do a lot of bitters with methylation. You do bitters maybe before methylation for like, I usually say go through 2 bottles, which is about 2 months. And then you can go back to like, really making sure you're getting enough folic acid daily, which is where nutritional yeast comes into play, or pomegranates. And then you can, kind of go back to your intestinal cleanse and letting that be like, hey, if everything's moving through the intestines, nothing would ever get stuck in the liver. The liver is secondary. The liver's like, really? I'm the leader. Like, what happened to management here? Are you really all that saturated? And that's what happens in a cleanse too, is people start going liver, 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 but their intestines are full. And the liver gives these huge signs, headaches, and even anger and upward fire, because we need downward fire to health. Inflamed is upward fire when it has nowhere to go. So we always need to be in that intestinal downward motion. The more clear it is, the more the liver's like, I can give you more load. Here's a bunch of microplastics. Get them out of your body. Otherwise, they're just going to sit there and you'll try to do a detox and your liver's like, I'm supposed to give management more to do? It's already overloaded. The freeway is full. And that's when we end up with like liver detox symptoms. So I always try to explain that. Enough downward intestinal motion, and that liver's gonna dump on demand. You give us some B12 or a B complex. I think we need more magnesium and B on the daily anyway, just to live in the toxic world we're in.
Yeah.
In general, because they're just getting used up, on demand, trying to fight toxins. So we're going to have to make sure we're constantly reloading the mineral, concentration back in, which is where things like chloroxygen, I want to talk to the travelers out there. Chloroxygen, oh, please don't spill it in your luggage. That would be horrible. It is very concentrated. But other than that, it's a little 1-ounce bottle. It's nettle concentrate. And you just squirt it in your water. It's pretty harmless by flavor, just kind of minerally. But it's just concentrated nettle, and it's really smart. And we use a lot of B and a lot of magnesium supplemental. Like, we have to supplement with travel, going that high up in the air and then coming back down and changing time zones. The circadian rhythms really count on those B complexes to like stay awake and go to bed.
And that's what's in the chloroxygen. There's a lot of B complexes
Yes.
happening
It's just
naturally with
pure
nettle.
nettle concentrate.
Wow.
And nettles have some of the highest amount of B in complex, really high B12. It has the magnesium, but not the citrate enough. So you still may want to think about something else for intestines. But if you need a like, how do I keep my liver and spleen fortified to keep up with, like I always think of that if I go to like Kathmandu or Delhi, like where everyone has been wearing masks way before COVID
Yeah.
because of pollution levels. And when I'm in those places, I really need to think of a few things that are going to keep my lungs activated and expanding and contracting and moving uh, like volatile gas chemicals. And then I need to make sure that I'm resupplementing anything that is going to be like the supporting factors in my body. So that's where chloroxygen to me really shines. It's easy to travel with. And just a little couple squirts a day in your water goes a long way. And I like to use it when I think methylation, like I don't want to give too much. Someone's at a maximum, but I want to give them just a little bit more of a mineral boost. I'll be like, why don't you do two? You're on 2 pills twice a day. That's the max. You know, you don't want to methylate forever. You want your body to open up its pathways and do it itself. But that magnesium will be just the extra boost in a liquid plant form that you can just absorb and really start storing like the strength of your liver to deal with toxins daily.
That's
So I do feel
amazing.
like nettle is brilliant for that,
That's
you know.
an amazing hack right there.
Yeah.
Is it safe to take every day, or is it something that you do kind of just to like kick things into gear if you're
Well, the chloroxygen also has a lot of iron, which is
okay?
fine when you're deficient in other minerals, but as soon as you have all your multivitamin minerals, which is kind of there, the one problem with that chloroxygen on a daily would be like, it could be a little too much iron and end up constipating you, or like it really is enough anti-inflammatory mineral compounds, which are all the B's and magnesium, to like get you maybe a little too cold.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes if I feel like somebody's anemic, so they need the iron, I love this for like regularly until further notice. Low blood pressure, anemia, but I like it with ginger tea. Like it needs a little adaptogen and a little warmth sometimes to really deliver the minerals. We always have to think about how do you have the blood flow to deliver the minerals to the liver, to the intestines, to the tissues that protect us. And that's where like ginger or cinnamon or cardamom, those are
Mm-hmm.
all yummy and very effective as adaptogens to help kind of drive those minerals through your bloodstream to the rest of your tissues.
All right, we've reached the halfway point on this episode. And I hope that you were taking notes. And if you weren't, it's okay. Stay tuned. In 2 weeks, we will have part 2 of this episode, which will be starting off with how mushrooms can help break down microplastics. Thank you for listening, and that's a wrap.
Hey, it's Mike from Vegas. ES Now is a holding court production. It is made by Courtney Barringer, and it has music by Parker Ainsworth. And a special thank you to Alexandra Shuck.